Thank you for joining this presentation about continuous integration for PowerBuilder. We will start by introducing quickly the reason why you want to implement continuous integration if you're not already familiar with the concept. Continuous integration, or CI, is meant to establish a consistent and automated way to build and test your application. You would test the code base as frequently as possible in order to detect and fix problems as soon as possible. So, because it's obviously better to fix a problem for a developer in the code that he has developed recently while it's still fresh in his memory. And also, you won't have other people build on top of this code containing the bug, because then if you fix the bug afterward, you may have regressions, propagating in many places in the application. So the sooner, the better. As a result, this will increase the agility and the productivity of the development team and also improve the reliability of the application. So in a typical CI workflow, you would possibly use a tool like Jenkins. It's a software that would trigger each task one by one in this workflow, step by step, if you like, and give you some feedback about the execution of each task. So Jenkins would first generate a build by calling PowerBuilder, and then you would have the possibility to test this build automatically with an automated testing tool and generate a report, send this report back to the proper person, project leader, manager, etc. On the other hand, you can also use an automated code analysis tool to inspect the code and find some vulnerabilities, maintainability issues to improve the quality and security of the code, generate a report, and also send it back to the project leader. In both cases, you would get at the end the result and evaluate whether the build would pass the test or not. If not, it would come back to the development team to fix some problems possibly, and if yes, then you can move ahead to the next step. So step number one, well, we need a build. So Jenkins would communicate with PowerBuilder and different tools and leverage the following features. First of all, as you probably know, PowerBuilder offers a native integration with Git or SVN that would allow Jenkins to fetch the source code and the PBL from the repository. Then Jenkins would use Orca script to update the PBLs and the PB standalone compiler to generate the new build. If you want to go further, Bruce Armstrong wrote some very detailed tutorial in two cases, whether you would write script to automate each task in the CI workflow, or if you want to use Jenkins, those are small component that you can directly integrate into Jenkins to communicate with PowerBuilder or other tools. And you would see that online. So Bruce Armstrong detailed all the steps, with screenshot. You have the plugins that you can download and all the explanations you need to go ahead and start implementing, generating the build with PowerBuilder and Jenkins. Step number two, you will automatically test the new build. And in this case, we will use a tool called Essential Test that provide a tight integration with PowerBuilder, and in particular, it will support complex objects like the data windows and also complex windows, because a classic PowerBuilder application offers very rich UI and complex scenario for the user to manipulate the application. That's what you need to reproduce automatically when doing regression testing with a tool like Essential Test. So we have Brian Lucier with us today, CEO of Zenix Software, that will show us in detail Essential Test and the integration of Essential Test in the CI workflow. But please, Brian, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Brian Lucier from Zenix Software. In this part of our demonstration, I'm going to discuss continuous integration for PowerBuilder testing with Essential Test. Essential Test supports CI through the following features. integration with SVN, or Subversion, for version control, integration with Jira for defect tracking, standalone command line for executing essential test tests and generating reports through third-party tools like TFS, Azure, and Jenkins. And also our brand new free Essential Test plugin for Jenkins that was initiated by Xenix Software. Essential Test will also be integrated soon with TFS Azure for version control, defect tracking, and test execution. Now let's have a look at some of these features. The first CI feature that I want to demonstrate for you is our integration with version control, and in this case specifically Subversion, or SVN. Typically teams of people are going to be using Essential Test, and it's important that we have version controls to support collaboration. Just like with development of a PowerBuilder application, we wouldn't want team members accidentally overriding changes of other team members when they're building their tests. And so Essential Test supports version control, and again specifically right now with Subversion, or SVN. Soon enough, Azure, TFS, and eventually Git. You'll notice up here in the left-hand corner of my application, you'll notice these circles in this little lock here. Well, the circles mean, the little round circles, suggest that I don't have a lock, which means that I cannot update those components. But in this particular case, I do have a lock. And so that means that anything that is stored in the tests file in the project library can be edited, but anything in any of the other files cannot. And I'll show you what I mean. This particular step is in the file steps.z. And so if I want to add this particular action to my step, normally I would just click the append button and it would work, or I could just drag it over and drop it. But it won't work right now because I don't have a lock on this file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button. I could unlock that way, or I could right click here and say acquire a lock. I typically just click this button. Now in our environment we do not require comments when we check out a file or when we acquire a lock, but you'll see when I go to commit I will be required to add a comment. In this case I want an exclusive lock, which means that I have the lock on this file so that I can check it back in when I'm finished. If anybody else on my team wants to acquire a lock while I have the file locked, they can still edit the file by acquiring a shared lock, which means that they're going to be required to merge their changes. There'll be a three-way merge that they're going to do before they can check their change in. But in this particular case, no one else has the file locked, so I'm going to go ahead and acquire a lock. You'll notice that the green lock now shows up on steps.z, and I'm able to make the change that I wanted to make. So I was able to add the click action to my step. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now before I commit, I want to show you a couple of other features. I come up to my project menu and I go to version control. You'll see that I could get a status on all the files in my project, and you're going to notice that I have two files locked, steps.z and test.z, which match the locks that you see up there. Now any other user in the system, so my teammates, can do a status and also see that and I'm AT user, that's my ID, Essential Test user, I have acquired locks on those two files. I can also get a history. So I can get a history of all the changes that were made in this particular project. I just put this particular demonstration project under version control, so there's not a whole lot of history to see. Now I've made some changes and I want to commit those changes. So there are a couple of ways of doing that. I could simply right-click and commit, and then that would commit only that particular file. Or I could go up to the project menu and I can say commit, and it will list the different files that I have acquired a lock on. And here I'm just going to put in a demo comment because this is just a demonstration. If I want to keep the locks, I can do that. In this case, I'm finished and I'm going to go ahead and release the lock. So I'm going to click OK, and the locks go away. But then if we come here and we look at the history, we will see that those particular files have now been modified. And you can see a date timestamp for the last commit that I just did. So those are the features that support collaboration through version control. Now let's have a look at Essential Test integration with defect tracking, specifically Jira. First thing you'll notice when you look at my Essential Test is you'll notice this little image of a bug here. That indicates that this particular failure has already been associated with a defect. Now if I want to read the details of that defect, I could either click on the little identifier here, or I could simply double click on the bug. And you'll notice that my defect opens. Now this is a bogus issue that's for demonstration purposes only. There's a few other things that I can do in terms of my integration with Jira. One is that I could right-click on another test and I could add that test to the defect. So maybe this particular test should be added also to defect 155. I could do that. Or perhaps I want to create a new defect. And if I do that, you'll see that again my Jira application opens, but this time it's going to open to the new defect screen, or the screen where I would create a defect. I could fill out the form, and then that particular test will be associated with that defect. One of the most interesting integration features, I think, is this Defects tab here. It's interesting because Essential Test is notified by Jira whenever there's a change to a defect, whenever the status changes. And in this particular case, AT155 is ready to confirm. That means that the developer has already resolved that particular error. So all I have to do is click here, and then if I go look at my plan, you'll notice that it found the defect for me. Now imagine that this is a large test plan where there are maybe hundreds or thousands of tests, and there could be many of them that are associated with this particular defect. Well, I don't have to go hunting for them, because clicking on that space here, ready to confirm, will find all of the tests that are associated with that defect. Now all I have to do is I can go ahead and run that particular test. Defect is fixed, so I need to determine whether or not the defect really is fixed, in which case I will close the defect, or perhaps the test is going to fail, in which case I would then reject the fix. So we're going to run the test and find out. So the test is now complete, and you'll notice that it passed this time. Now again, imagine that this is a large test plan, and there could be many places where this particular defect is now associated with a particular test. But I don't have to go find them, because Essential Test has a built-in query that will find all the cases where there is a defect open but the test has passed. So if I click OK, you'll notice that Essential Test will mark or find all of those tests for me. Because what I need to do now is go find all the places, perhaps, because maybe there were many defects that were fixed, all the places where there is a test that has passed that's associated with the defect, prompting me to then go ahead and close the defect, because the issue was, in fact, fixed. The last feature that I'm going to demonstrate for you today is our new Jenkins plugin. So here I am in Jenkins, and if you're a Jenkins user, this interface looks familiar to you. I'm going to go ahead and click on Configure. And here what you're going to do, you'll see that there is a new, if you go to your build step, you'll see that there's a new Essential Test command line builder. And I've already clicked on that and completed it so that you didn't have to watch me type in the values, but you'll notice that I'm going to identify where the location of my essential test is. I'll specify my project path and my project name. In this case, I want to run a test set. I could run an individual test, or I can run a test set. And there's the name of my test set. I also want to generate a couple of reports. So I'll generate an overview and a summary. And I want those in PDF format. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to click Build. And when I do that, Essential Test is automatically going to start to run. So you're going to see Essential Test pop up the application. So we're testing it against our PowerBuilder application. We're going to run 3 tests. These tests are adding inventory, or they're purchasing items from our PowerBuilder application. One test is already passed. Those of you that have seen other demos from Xenix against PowerBuilder applications might be familiar with this demonstration application. Second test is now passed, and we're executing the final test. Each test will actually put in an order, and then it will verify that order to make sure that the database has been successfully updated. Now that test is passed as well. And let's go back and have a look at Jenkins. The tests are actually, reports are actually being generated right now, and now the test has completed. Now there's a couple of things that we can look at here. You'll notice that I've also input another plugin called Plots. And if I click on Plots, you can see that along with executing essential test tests, we're also storing all of the results of those tests, the number passed, the number failed, the number blocked, and the number not run, so that inside of Jira you could actually get a history of this particular test set. You'll notice that this particular run didn't go as well as the others. These have completely passed, but in this particular case, 1 test failed and 2 tests have passed. Now I can also go over to my workspace, and in the workspace I'm going to find any of the reports that were generated. Now, this report doesn't look too exciting because all of the tests had passed, but actually that is exciting if we're trying to get our release out the door, because we want all of the tests to have passed. And then I've also generated a summary as well. So again, that's brand new integration with Jira, free plugin that's available, and you can just get it from Jenkins and install the plugin, and it will integrate with Essential Test, just as I've showed you here. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the presentation. I'm going to pass the control back over to Christoph. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. So if you're not so familiar yet with Essential Test, you can learn more about the tool and its feature and how to implement it by watching a conference by Brian about Essential Test during this Elevate conference series. You can also watch a number of webcasts about automating the test with Essential Test of a PowerBuilder application, or a combination of PowerBuilder and .NET applications, or even a Power Server application, a PowerBuilder application deployed with Power Server on the web. on PowerBuilder TV, and of course on the Essential Test website you will find lots of resources to download a copy, try it for yourself, learn more about the tool, the features, etc. Now let's move to step number 3. In our continuous integration process, we will now see how to automate the static analysis of the code inspection with Visual Expert. So you can fetch code from different sources and scan for vulnerabilities, bugs, and quality issues. That would give you, on one hand, some high-level indicator to help figure out if the build is acceptable or not. And also you will have a detailed, a comprehensive report that will highlight all the issues at the code level and each instruction level. This is how it works. You would trigger the code inspection with different ways. You can schedule it on a regular basis, call Visual Expert in the command line, or use a Jenkins integration in your CI workflow. Then you would pull the code, fetch the code from different sources. If it's a popular application, for example, you may have targets and PBLs in your Windows folders, or you can fetch the code from a source control, SVN, TFS, Git. And if it's a database code, because we're talking about PowerBuilder, but also Oracle, PL SQL, and SQL Server Transact SQL code, you can fetch the code directly from the database together with the database structure. Then the static analysis of the code will be triggered and the result will be saved in a repository, shared repository for anybody in the team to view result either with a specific UI that I will show you quickly, or by generating the report that we will also see in a minute. So let's see how this is working. First, we will see how to create a project with Visual Expert and select your code. Then we will see how to execute the static analysis of this code from Jenkins. And finally, we will see how to explore the result on the UI and in the report that are generated. So this is a Visual Expert, and if I want to create a new project, I would come here, Project, New, and first I would have to select the code that I want to analyze. Can choose the language PowerBuilder, of a certain version, workspace target. As you can see, instead of pointing at a target directly, I could select PBLs somewhere in the network or fetch the code, like we said, from different source control. But for now, let's pick this example. This is for one target, but I can add more code anytime I want. Either I can add additional PowerBuilder applications or database code, Oracle, SQL Server, for example, that I find in the database or in files or in a source control as well. Then I would enter the credential and a few additional settings. That's it. My project is defined. Visual Expert knows where is the code that I should analyze. Now I have to trigger the code analysis automatically from Jenkins. Let's move to the next step. Okay, so first I'm going to start Jenkins. In this case, I'm running it as a web site under IIS, in the local IIS. And I will create a new project. First, I will give it a name, PB sample. And it's going to be a freestyle project, which is the default type of project. Then I need to enter a description for this project. So let's make it a PowerBuilder sample project. Then I need to choose a source control. In our case, it's going to be SVN. I would have to enter the connection detail, at least a URL. And because it's a local repository, let me copy and paste the URL. It's a local repository, so I don't need to enter the credentials in that case. The next step is when do I want to execute this workflow? And for us, it's going to be when we're going to pull the source control on a regular basis to see if a new change has been committed. Now I need to enter some parameters to specify how frequently plus a few other details. This means that every minute I would check if there's a new change committed in the repository. And now I will start declaring the steps. First step of my workflow, I need to get the source code. So let me copy and paste to make it faster. Okay, so I will, you see, I will get some code from SVN, and this is the location of my project. Then I would create step number 2. I need to analyze this code. Copy and paste again. So I will run Visual Expert and ask Visual Expert to run the code analysis for the project we just created before. So you see, that's the Visual Expert console with the parameter /a for analysis and p for the name of the project. Then step number 3, once the code has been analyzed, I will generate a code inspection report, also as specified in the project, in the Visual Expert project. So you see, again, calling Visual Expert with a /d parameter in that case, D for documentation, to generate this documentation. Okay, then I save the project and we're good to go. Now let's simulate a change. So I've been modifying some detail in the code. I would commit this change in SVN. I need to enter a description. Okay, then validate. Okay, let's see what's happening in Jenkins. So it's monitoring, the source control, like we said, and now it detected a change. So we'll start the process automatically with the 3-step we just defined. See? That's it, ongoing. And if we take a look at the console output, we see, step by step what's going on. So for now, here's running the code analysis /a. Now the code analysis is done. Moving to the next step /d, generating the documentation. And when the last step is done, you'll see a final message. That's it, finished with a success. So let's see what it looks like in the Visual Expert UI. So I'm reopening Visual Expert to check out the results. So just a quick introduction to the UI. Once the analysis is completed, you can view the code of your application. In this part, you would see component and dependencies between the component and object. And anytime you have to see some code, it's going to be on the right-hand side, right here. And you have a number of features that appear on the left, but for now we're going to make it quite simple and directly jump into the code inspection result. So I have this section here called code inspection. If I click on this line to view the result of the code inspection for PowerBuilder, I can also check out for Oracle SQL Server depending on what's inside my project. But for now, let's take a look at what's inside PowerBuilder. I get this dashboard right here. It first gives me some key indicators with categories of issues and a grade for each category from A to D. So for maintainability, security, and reliability, depending on the number of issues found in the code, plus some metrics, lines of code, comments, and date of the last analysis. Then in the second part here, I would see some information about the volume of issue found with a variation since the last analysis, distribution by type of problem found, and the severity, critical, major, minor, etc. Then I have some information about what is called the remediation cost, which is the cost in terms of workload to fix all the bug and vulnerabilities found in the code, with a distribution of this workload depending on their severity, and a variation also since the last analysis. And then the same concept for the technical debt, and this time the technical debt, it's the cost still in terms of workload, man days, but this time it's for fixing the maintainability issues. Now, if I want to, this is of course a high level overview of the code inspection result. If I want to go into lower detail and open a list of issues and see in the code exactly where it's located, I can here select a particular type, for example, of a problem like security vulnerabilities. And this list is opening right here, where you can see each type of issues with the number of problem found right here. You know, that's a rule that is related to the use of AES encryption. If I double click on this, first I have a description of the rule that has been broken with by some problems, and examples of non-compliant code and sometimes compliant code as well. And if I just pick one of them, I would see exactly in the code where the problem is located. I can fix this object. You know, it's a function located in this PBL, and it goes on like that with additional examples right here. Okay, so this is for exploring the result in the Visual Expert UI. But also, if you remember, we have been generating a code review report. You can open it directly from the place where it has been generated, of course, or from here. If I just go there and open it here, and I get this documentation where the problems or issues are also listed by categories, and I can view each of them one by one. Those are unused objects that I can remove from the code, duplicated component, etc., etc. So you can both view the problems in the Visual Expert UI with a description at instruction level of the problem that should be fixed, or in the documentation with an HTML set of pages that you can ship out and share with anybody in your team. So we're almost done with our presentation. Just a word in case you want to try it with your code. You can simply download a copy of Visual Expert from the Visual Expert website. You get a free copy from here. I do recommend you take a look at the tutorials right here, because they will take you by the hand step by step to install and configure a copy, create a project with your code, and use the key features. And in case you have any question, you can contact us via the support form here and submit a ticket. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. Bye-bye.